Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX. And unfortunately, we do not have David Finkelstein with us today, founder and CEO of BDEX. He had to attend to some family matters, and hopefully we will have him back with us next week. But our enterprise sales director, fortunately, is very busy and was supposed to be here with us too. And he will be popping in here in a few minutes. So you'll be seeing Adam Fitzgerald back with us today. But until then, we are very privileged to have a very special guest and actually a BDEX partner on the show. So let's please welcome Matt Spiegel. He's the EVP TruAudience of Growth Strategy at TransUnion. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Good to be here.
Great. Glad to have you here. Well, would you like to kick us off first by telling us a little bit about yourself and what brought you? Well, I know you're from Illinois and you started there and you're still kind of there, but what brought you to TransUnion?
Yeah, sure. That's certainly a factor. I suppose if we go all the way back, I've been somehow connected to the digital marketing, data, and tech industry since the late 90s. I joined this industry when people were still asking whether the internet was actually a thing or not. And I have been privileged to stay in the industry since. My career started actually in the ad sales side of the business, right around the early 2000s when search was becoming a thing. I moved into the search space and started a search agency, Resolution Media. We sold that to Omnicom. I stayed with Omnicom for several years and had a couple different roles with Omnicom. So I spent a bunch of years in the agency world. After time there, went back kind of the ad tech early startup stages and did a couple different stops there. I ultimately did as one does in the middle of their career and not exactly sure what they want to do. And I moved into consulting for a little while and joined MediaLink. Spent just over 4 years with MediaLink doing consulting at this intersection of data and technology meets the media and marketing business. And really all the stops along the journey for me have always been about that intersection. How does data and technology influence the world of media and marketing? While at MediaLink, TransUnion became a customer of mine, and then ultimately, when time came for the next career stop, I spoke to the folks at TU and wanted to go on the journey here, which was really underpinned by, I joined in 2018 when the word identity still was certainly being used, but was just becoming to have, like, I think, more specific strategic meaning. And we decided to go on a journey of putting together a whole suite of solutions that were to center on how does marketing evolve in a world of specific identity, both at an individual and household level, and what's the experiences that you could generate when you put that kind of capability set together. And so here, being at TransUnion now for almost 7 years, I've done a bunch of acquisitions, some small acquisitions early on, some in the kind of audience development space. We bought a company called TruAudience that was very big in streaming and the data assets for streaming. Very involved in the acquisition of Newstar a couple of years ago. Ultimately, putting together a material business, as we'll certainly talk about, that has an underpinning and an identity, but helps marketers in the ecosystem do everything from understand their customers to reach and segment their customers to ultimately measure the outcomes from those investments. And today, having helped put together a lot of the teams and people and businesses to have this business at TransUnion, my job is in this growth strategy role is to figure out how to make sure that we're connected to what our customers need and what we're building and how to have those things marry. And so represent us in market, work with our key clients and help the product organization to continue to understand what customers need and want from us.
That is amazing. And just as you were talking there, I apologize for the rude Slack notification. It was Adam. Adam is in the studio. Adam, so glad to have you with us. I hope you caught some of the intro, but Adam, meet Matt. Matt, meet Adam.
Adam, how we doing?
Matt, great to meet you. Jesse, good to see you as always. I apologize for my tardiness, but it is great to be with you. I caught the very, very tail end of the introduction there, but excited for our conversation today and excited to learn a little bit more about your background and touch on the fabulous topics we have today.
Love it, Adam. Good to see you. Look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm not going to complain about the enterprise sales director being busy, Adam. So we'll just go into topic one, solving the martech chaos, the role of connected identity. Could you kick us off with this topic, Matt?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. What's really interesting about what we see happening right now is we actually just recently did some research with Forrester that highlighted that despite all of the talk that we've all been having about how it's all about personalization, it's all about doing that at scale, and I think many of us instinctively feel that with all the technology that we've all collectively invented, that the mass amount of the marketing ecosystem must feel as if it's going great. And what we actually learned is that many marketers and their partners still feel like the ability to deliver personalization at scale is still a massive challenge. And what we found as part of that research is that part of what that comes from is the fact that many companies, or sorry, let me say it this way, the average number of martech technology partners for a company is 16, all right? And so what's interesting is what's happened is in this world, this desire to create a common ecosystem and a common understanding of consumers to deliver consistent experiences. What we've done in the industry is we've created a ton of different point solutions that actually are not talking to each other enough. Now, some might think that that's a message to change the stack. It's actually not, right? The reality is to rewrite one's technology stack amongst all these different partners would be a crazy and complicated endeavor. But what we're finding is that what's actually missing is just the connective tissue, right? And so what we're spending a lot of time thinking about and working on and working with our customers, and what we're seeing is actually that the issue isn't any one technology solution set. It's how do you actually make them talk to each other in a way that they can understand actually the core intelligence underneath them, which is who is your customer? Who is this person? However you define that, be it as at a household level, an individual level, be it based on a digital signal or a physical world signal, doesn't really matter. The core point being is that what we're seeing is that the actual way to deliver personalization at scale isn't to try and rewrite your whole stack, but is instead to take these disparate systems and recognize that what you're missing is the common language between all of them. And that at the end of the day, that has to be identity. And identity defined as not as a device ID or a singular technological signal, but actually the understanding of a person or a household, or at least a device profile set, so that you can make those decisions actually make sense, and that you're delivering that consistent experience you really want to as a marketer. And so I think that this notion is that the key thing that we see possible is that when you make these connections happen, you'll actually start delivering personalization at scale. And that's listen, I think what we're all after, right? I mean, that's what we as consumers expect. That's what marketers want to deliver. And so that's I'd say where I'd kick it off, right? Which is the mission here is clear. And if we can do a better job stitching these stacks together, I think we can actually move the market to what everyone says they want to accomplish, but surprisingly enough, is still having a hard time making it possible.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, Matt. And I love how you focused on really the core glue isn't the individual platform digital identifiers, right? It seems like, you can go out in the ecosystem today and find a dozen different platforms that have a dozen different customer IDs or unique IDs or some differing form of identifier. And so making that more revolve around who the consumer is or who the customer is and what their profile looks like and the different attributes and interests and behaviors that make them who they are. I think that's really the secret sauce. My question for you is, have you seen anybody start to kind of alleviate this market fragmentation really successfully? And if so, my question is kind of what's the trickle down impact to the customer experience and the customer engagement been in that process?
Yeah, definitely have. Now we're going to have to talk about it in generalities versus some of the specific clients that we're seeing doing some of the great work. But I can tell you that certainly there is a world of a little bit of the have and have nots for sure. Where we're seeing it work and what we're seeing happen is when the identity resolution and identity discussion does move from, Eric, where you talked about, which is it's not just about the singular signal, right? But it is about understanding the person or the household. And so what we end up spending a lot of time talking about is any individual kind of component part is not the answer, right? And too many people use identity as simply about a buying ID or a singular kind of fragment. Well, it's not about that singularity. The people who are doing it best are recognizing that while in one universe I might use a digital signal, let's say a hashed email, in another universe I might use a physical address, and in another perspective I might use an IP address. That the answer isn't to try to A, limit yourselves to only one of those signals, and B, to suggest that that is the entirety of the signal that's going to matter everywhere. That what you need is actually the interconnected tissue, that Rosetta Stone that allows you to translate between them. And that's, I think, where the challenge lies, is because some systems don't need a hashed email. Some systems don't need a physical address. But in many cases, what you have in your different systems, when you have your email CRM system, you're going to have a hashed email, but you don't have an address. Well, in your customer system, you might have that address because you're actually delivering product. Okay, so now how do you link them? And so what we're finding is the companies that we see most advanced at making this happen are the ones that have actually unleashed this data and don't have it in silos, that have found a way to funnel the right set of a much more connected view of a singular customer in whatever their systems are. So that's where we're seeing it work the best. And Adam, I apologize. I called you Eric for no good reason. I meant Adam.
It's all right. I've been called a lot worse in my life, so I'll take it.
I love that. I mean, identity, it's not just an email. It's not just a device. It's not a cookie. It's a person, right? At the end of the day, that's what we all just need to remember.
Well, yeah, listen, if when we're really talking about identity resolution, yes, right? I don't mind the industry referencing identity in all the different ways that we often do. I just think we got to do a better job of talking really what's that use case to talk about understanding the framework of the identity discussion we're in. I think there's a different reality of being truly about creating an identity resolution offering or capability or infrastructure to your marketing stack than there is the notion of, hey, I've got a cookie ID, so that equals identity, or I have a device footprint, so that equals identity. Sure, in some instances you can call that an identity discussion, but at the level where we're focused and where we think that the big value comes from, and where marketers really want to move the needle, for us, it's much more about that sophistication of the ability to do true identity resolution, which again won't always be at an individual or household basis, but as often as we can enable, we want that. But it is about creating that ecosystem so there's consistency, and I think that's where our industry often can get lost. Is you say, hey, well, every media partner or every technology partner I'm working with has identity, and so I use all of them. Well, then I'd argue that you're really not truly doing identity. You're not really using identity resolution in the way that it is best served. You really siloed your data inputs, and that we think leaves a lot of opportunities on the table.
Yeah, I would agree.
What would you say, are some of the biggest barriers holding brands back from just looking at all of the signals? I mean, is it technology limitations, privacy concerns?
Like in most cases, it's the technology is usually not the problem. There's usually plenty of technology, and the issue then gets into other things, and that's some combination of structural, which can be, sometimes that's org design, sometimes, as you highlighted, is legal, sometimes it's just the fact that big companies have lots of technology implementation work to do, and you can only get so much done. And so we find a little bit in each organization that we work with is a little bit different. I'd say the most common issue is that it's the marketer meets technology team challenge. And that sometimes that gets wrapped in compliance and other things like that. But at the core, it's how is the marketing organization aligned with their technology organization? So, at the most broad strokes, how is the CMO and the CIO, how are they partnered? And do they have a shared, agenda? And what kind of capacity do you have to invent? So it's less typically whether the technology is available. It's more, have you been able to architect it in a way that works? And then can you maintain that? And that's, listen, these big companies, I think we often forget that marketers are departments of a company that's not served to do marketing, right? They got a lot of stuff to do. And so there's only so much you can get done. I think that's where we're struggling. There's just so many options and so many tools. And it's not surprisingly, we want to chase a lot of new things. And then you don't actually connect the dots and you don't get the goodness of what you maybe intended when you license that last technology platform. So I think the technology is there. I think we got strategy and structural problems that actually are more relevant.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I love what you said about the relationship between the CMO and the CIO. It always just comes down to those human relationships, right?
Listen, incentives and relationships, I think, are what we're all still fighting. Listen, I don't think there's anyone out there that doesn't know what we want to get done and doesn't have a desire to get that done. And again, that being deliver great customer experiences that are personalized and that can scale, right? I mean, as marketers and the ecosystem that supports them, not just the marketers, we all want to enable that. Like, we're all after the same thing. Devil's in the details. It turns out under the hood there's a lot of sausage to make. And it can be very hard to keep that consistent. Listen, I suppose the last thought here might be that's why it's important you don't lead with finding technology you don't lead with technology to figure out what problem to solve. You figure out what problem you're trying to solve and then see if technology is the answer.
Yeah, such a great point. Thank you for ending with that one. Problem first. But let's get into the second topic. So
Sure.
Beyond first party data, achieving the true audience clarity. So can you kick us off with this one?
Yeah, listen, I think that there's a talk track in our industry that says it's all about my own customer data. Well, listen, it is as much about your own customer data as you can make it. I'm all for that. Clearly, there is a ton of insights and relevance that comes from leveraging your knowledge about your customers. A lot you can learn. However, if the only thing you're doing is using your own customer data, then generally speaking, unless you're a really unique entity, and there are a handful of those unique entities out there, but generally speaking, you're going to cause two problems if you only use your own customer data. One is it's hard to grow because you are only leveraging customers that have historically bought your product, not customers that might. And what are you missing from customers that have yet to experience your product? So that's one problem. The second problem is it's almost impossible that you're going to know everything that could be relevant about your customers from your own data set. Again, what you know is, well, what have they done with you? What maybe some of their basic demographics, again, depending on what type of product or service you're delivering, maybe their addressable characteristics, and then about essentially their share of their wallet information as relates to how they work with you as a provider, whatever that service is. But if you're selling shoes, let's say, then what do you actually know about their financial well-being or their home infrastructure or their any other types of attributes that might be of interest? Now, you might say, well, it's not that relevant. Well, actually, probably it is. There's a lot of the potential signal in that data. And so what we say all the time is if you want to make sure you have a sustainable growing business, you're going to have times where you have a need on some marketing strategy for some other data signal, some other just-in-time knowledge about your customer or your prospects that's going to allow you to grow your business. So we're all about the kind of the yes and of data strategy here, which is use your customer data to the fullest extent possible, and then enhance your data set, add attributes, add signal about behavior interests or past shopping interests, or sometimes just addressable signals, and then model that data. Create different segment strategies that you're going to test and you're going to use to find out maybe a strategy on a subset audience that unlocks sales that you never thought possible. And the only way to, again, go through that is to have access to more data. Of course, you need technology tools. Increasingly, this will all be driven by generative AI tools that allow us to find these data signals really, really easily. But if you limit yourself to your own data set, I generally believe you will limit your growth potential. And you're going to only, the analogy I often like to use is you are fishing in a very small pond, right? And so we've just seen over and over and over again, the amount of insights you can garner when you are accessing other data signal is huge. And you don't have to take possession of it. I think a lot of times there's this notion of, well, in order to do that, I've got to license a whole bunch of data I don't want. Well, that's not true. And we can get into that, structural reality of how you get there. But I think the important headline here is that scaling customer sets, delivering personalized experiences, the idea that you as any single entity have all the data you need, I just think is fundamentally untrue, and too often leads you to spend a lot of money against getting the customers you're already going to get. And that's not how you grow a business.
Yeah. I think we've seen a lot of instances with some of our customers and partners where the word I want to use is balance, right? Balancing their first party data and how they leverage and lean into that with the ability to model and scale. I think the industry in a lot of ways has done some harm in how we present and view modeled data, right?
For sure.
I think, there have certainly been some bad actors out there, and most of us that deal with data on a regular basis can probably name instances where we have worked with folks that just had bad data or messy data, or the modeling algorithm was not set up right to begin with. And so I think in some regards there's this headwind that the industry has created of people being hesitant to use quote unquote model data. But I think one of the things that I took away from what you stressed was being able to build off of your own first party data. So that's not the only lens through which you're looking at customer personas or customer growth or customer acquisition strategies, but a tool to help you,
That's right.
Continue to expand, beyond what you currently own or know. And I think that ties back really nicely to what we talked about in the first topic, where there's all these different tools and technologies that, when we let them operate in silos, that becomes a lot harder to lean into and to trust the modeling and the expansion of your own first party data as a tool to help drive growth, right? And so the closer we can get to building those connective fibers and that connective tissue as individual organizations, I think that only sets us up for more success.
Yeah, listen, I totally agree. I say this all the time. It's not that first party or third party data is good or bad. It's bad data is bad. And you are right. Too often we have taken very weak signal and suggested that is indicative of actual, preference or propensity to do something. And so, listen, my message would be understand the types of data companies you're working with. Obviously, we feel in TransUnion we're among the best at it, but there are other companies that source data, of course. And for us, it's about actually understanding the signal from the noise of the different data sets and not overrepresenting any one particular signal. And then when you are modeling data, being transparent about the inputs and about the variables that are showing themselves to be relevant, and then recognizing to continue to test and learn your way through this, right? If you could create a segment and be done, right, then we wouldn't have a data segmentation, data modeling industry to begin with. The reality is you're constantly looking. And so, listen, for me, it is bad data is bad, good data is useful, and you should source that good data wherever you can, and recognize that there will be times when you need to stop using subsignal and try something else. But again, your own customer data can also actually be really bad if you haven't resolved, listen, if I'm in your database twice because once I'm Matt and the next time I'm Matthew, well, then that's bad data too. So it isn't about where it comes from. It's about, have you cleaned it up? Have you enriched it? Have you made it accurate? That to me is way more important than the source at the core. But I think you make a great point. I'm absolutely emphasizing use your own customer data as a key point of emphasis. You should not ignore it. And if you don't have enough of your own customer data, you should be working to build more of it. It just isn't the end all be all. It's not the end of the game.
Yes. Great point. And Lauren was agreeing too. We saw her comment, bad data is bad. I mean, I think everyone can pretty much emphasize this. But what would you say to the good thing about bad data is at least you know that it's bad, so then you can exclude it.
But there is truth there, right? Now, again, if you set up the right systems, right, and you're doing the right testing, you should be able to weed out bad data real fast. So just my advice is don't think that all sourced data from outside your walls is bad. It just doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make any sense that modeling is bad. It turns out that data science makes a lot of sense, right? That there's actually science and math behind it. And so the notion that the only way to grow a business is with, known deterministically derived data, and that data science is bad. Come on, right? That's not the world we live in. That's not the AI generative tools that are coming. It's about modeling. It's about having enough data though to feed that model to make good decisions. But that's all part of the equation if you want to grow your business.
Yeah, such a great point. Anything more you would add on that topic, Adam?
No, I think this is one that we could probably spend hours on,
Definitely.
because it's a world that we all live in and experience too frequently. I think my bigger question was going to be, how do you really identify bad data? And you touched on that a few minutes ago with your answer. So it's a good topic.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on then. Let's get into navigating the measurement maze.
Yeah.
Could you kick us off, Matt?
Yeah, sure. Listen. I think we all believe, I'm sure, and more sound bites, right? Which is you can't test and try what you can't measure, and so there's always a constant desire to find the right measurement to prove incremental sales are happening. So what's been happening in the industry? It's interesting. So listen, we're in the business a couple flavors of measurement, which I think is indicative of how the industry has been evolving. Our space is both that top-down marketing mix modeling, MMM, which is really good for longer-term strategic forecasting, giving a good sense of where my next incremental dollar should be placed. And again, that's great for kind of more macro lens, so that forecasting, where am I going to make investments on a quarter-to-quarter or year-to-year basis. We also happen to provide much attribution reports that get you much more in that granular level of, hey, what's that specific initiative I'm doing? Where am I driving that sale? And what we found in both of these things is, in both these categories, is there's a interesting belief that as the data access has changed, as the quote cookie is dying, and signal loss is part of what we live in, that you can't do a lot of the more granular attribution that you used to be able to do. And listen, I'd be here to tell you that fundamentally it's just not true. You just have to source different signals, and that's part of that identity resolution discussion. So one, I suppose the message here I'd just like to highlight is, listen, the flavors of measurement are growing, not shrinking, and that while different data assets are available to do that measurement, there's plenty of ways to go from a top-down strategic look to a very granular look as well. All of it's possible. And the other thing I think I would then highlight is, we often get asked, like, well, what's the right measurement approach? What's the right thing to measure? Well, there isn't an answer to that question. So much of that gets to some of what we were talking earlier too, about what's the C-suite care about? What are they? How are the various players that are influencing marketing? What is it their headline is about? Is there a certain metric they care about? Are they all about the last mile of a performance metric? Are they about kind of the brand impact? Is there a incrementality metric that really matters? So for us, what we really talk about is, the answer then is yes. Like whatever matters to your business is what you should measure. And I think what's interesting and where we spend a lot of time with our customers is, the best thing you can then do is aggregate the right data sets and turn them into reports at the frequency that you're going to make decisions. And that is different for every company. On that, kind of macro marketing mix modeling, again, mostly that really should be effectively used for, again, some kind of quarterly or annual planning process to really think about where my macro dollars are going to be shifted. Separately, again, attribution analysis should be run as frequently as you can optimize the results, or optimize the decisions you get from those reports. If you've got a sophisticated data science team, and if you're optimizing your media choices regularly, maybe you're buying a lot programmatically and you're going to go in there daily, and you're going to want to run a lot of attribution reports. If you're after lifetime value, you want to make sure that you're feeding that customer data into the measurement suite. So you're not just looking at conversions, but you're actually looking at the value of each one. So what I guess the headline here again is, the measurement space in my mind is extremely interesting. There's a lot of evolution. There's a lot of new things that people are talking about. And I think there's a lot of fear that what used to work won't work. I generally believe that everything is still possible. And the key here is how do you connect the dots so that you derive whatever ROI and efficiency and effectiveness and growth metrics you're looking for. And that could be a whole host of reports, a whole host of solutions. And what I would just tell you is, I think the key is you chase too many metrics and you're going to have a hard time chasing anything. And so you need to have a hero metric or 2 hero metrics that are really driving the day at most. And then you can have a lot of other proxies that help you think through what are signals to those hero metrics. But that's where I would go, which is there isn't an answer. There is an answer about what do you decide in your business matters most, and kind of follow that and do whatever you can to follow that as for in a strategically and as a sophisticated way as possible. So yeah, that's I'd start there. How about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. Were you going to say something, Adam?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love your line of, I'm probably going to butcher this, but if you're measuring all the metrics, you can't really measure any metrics, right? I'm curious the role that you're starting to see AI play in helping with analysis and measurement and helping to determine, okay, if I don't know where to start with my hero metrics, as you refer to them, what role does AI play in all of that?
Yeah, it's going to have a huge role as the short answer. Listen, I think what's extremely powerful, and again today when we reference AI, we're generally thinking about generative AI. There's the machine learning, algorithmic based AI that I think is kind of built into so much marketing technology already. But the generative AI lens of this is really, really interesting. Why? Well, speed is going to be, I think, in this dimension, a huge part of the equation. The ability to crunch numbers, to create agents that can run scenarios, it's going to unleash a set of analytics kind of prowess that we haven't seen. And so it's more about, well, depends. It could be about it. I think it can be all of these things. It can be about the fact that data is just much more accessible. It can be about the fact that you can run scenarios way faster, that you're not necessarily relying on a person to run a model, but you can have an agent do it in minutes and hours versus days and weeks. That's huge. It can be the fact that you, as a result of that, can now spend more time sourcing different data sets. It can be about creating more reports. So listen, what generative AI is going to unleash is an access to data and insights and summaries of what you're seeing and there's a knowledge flood that's going to happen here that's going to be crazy. Now, that's the good news. The danger is, back to Adam, what you were highlighting, we can get really quickly lost in all that data and kind of get lost in the noise of it all. But where companies are struggling today, if the scenario is you're struggling to keep up with what you want to measure because the processes just take too long, ultimately generative AI are going to make it so that that's not a concern. And your challenge will be more of, what do I do about all the data and decisions that I have the potential to make, more so than the challenge of, can I run another report? So I don't think there's any question that generative AI is going to have a ton of value here, and just get us back to hopefully being marketers. Things will go faster and we can analyze more stuff more quickly. I think that's going to be major.
I like that. Getting Matt, us back to marketers. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm curious, Matt, what's the role, not just in measurement, but in all of this, what's the role that you're seeing increasing scrutiny on privacy regulations play?
Well, listen, I what's the role? I mean, I suppose that the core of what I think about it, for me, it's kind of quote nothing new. I suppose that comes from a lens that says, working at TransUnion, we're a company that has always been highly regulated, given what is the core business, being in the credit reporting agency space. And so it's kind of second nature to us to be navigating a world of various requirements and compliance restrictions, appropriately so, and often, listen, we prefer it when they're more from a U.S. lens, more federal than state driven. It is more annoying to navigate state by state privacy laws, but such as it is today. But listen, I suppose at the core to your question, listen, we should have, there needs to be, and the government still needs to work on, the industry needs to support still more modern forms of privacy regulations. I don't think GDPR was the answer. I don't think it is designed. It is done as designed. But at the core, privacy protections and data security protections are good for the industry because they're good for the consumer and they're good for keeping bad actors out. And so I'm all for it. It's just about finding the right balance. Some of the stuff that sometimes gets talked about is we're going to outlaw third-party data. Back to the conversation we were having earlier, that serves only to help the guys that are huge that have access to all the data already. So that makes no sense to me. But listen, at the macro, listen, let's support common sense, if you will, smart, protections for customers. That makes a ton of sense. So I think there might be things we find that the industry has historically done, which ultimately becomes things we learn we shouldn't do, which I think is great. But I don't see the personalization train ending because of privacy regulation. I see it finding a good balance.
I would agree.
Yeah, such a great way to sum that up. Thank you so much for that, Matt.
Sure.
Man, I could ask so many more questions. I know we're getting low on time. And we need to find out, what are your favorite tools in your tech stack that are empowering you and your team? What would you say to that, Matt?
It's interesting. I am, my day-to-day is less in the tech stack and more, more in the market. So I bet I have less interesting answers, but I can tell you some of what comes up constantly about what our teams love. There's no shortage of love for all the various tools of Jira and on all the ways that our technology teams can tie product strategies together with those tools. We are a Microsoft shop here, and I know some will go, ooh, but I got to tell you, Teams is a pretty powerful tool. And while others might be prefer Slack or others, Teams here is a tool we use regularly and with a lot of value. And then the other things that I see us using a lot, which are really, really useful, are Confluence-like tools. All of the tools that go to data sharing and data versioning. And again, so for me, I'm less in the guts of all the latest AI widgets and guru stuff that our product dev people are using. So for me, I think the thematic you hear there is anything that is driving collaboration more effectively. That's the stuff that I get jazzed about, because that means we're getting more efficient.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I like that. Microsoft Teams. I mean, so many people probably use that, and it just comes down to collaborating and communicating again, right?
Yeah, I get why some prefer it not be Teams and prefer, more startup tools. And I'm sure, other ones might have, better features and functions. But I gotta tell you what, compared to where we were pre-pandemic, I'll take Teams all day long.
Oh, definitely. Especially if we can get the CIO and the CMO messaging each other, right?
There we go. Let's make that happen.
Yeah, and maybe some sales messages in there too. I don't know. I guess Teams doesn't do that like Slack does. Slack, you can bring outside people. I'm not sure about Teams.
And that's it. And there you go, right? That's where I'm sure there are some that will say, well, Slack is even better. And you know what? I don't doubt it. But we happen to be a team shop, and I'll still take it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely benefits to keeping things internal. So definitely very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. But before we go, Matt, could you please let our listeners know just a little bit more about what you're working on there and how they could reach out to you if they wanted to contact TransUnion after the show? Yeah,
sure. Find me on LinkedIn is the easiest. Matt Spiegel, or maybe I might be under Matthew Spiegel, I think is my official profile. I don't know who that Matthew guy is, but you can find me either way. So LinkedIn's the best way. Message me there. I'd be happy to connect. Listen, what we're solving for is so much of what we've certainly discussed today. Our mission and mandate here is to help marketers be marketers, as I was saying earlier. And ultimately what we see is that the influx of data and technology, where ideally it's made it simpler, has actually made the world a little more complicated. We're trying to help customers use their existing technology stacks and to stitch it together in ways that make it easier to do the type of personalization at scale that companies want to do. So we're solving for that really in many ways across that identity challenge, across that audience discovery challenge, and across the measurement challenge. And so I'm happy to get into dialogue with anyone that wants to have that kind of conversation.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we really appreciate you coming on. And before we go, I'm just going to make a little spiel here. I got a QR code I'll throw up on the screen, but we would like to invite audience members to get powered by BDEX. So we've got Adam here with us, so I may have to just pick on you a little bit, Adam, but imagine, audience, just harnessing the power of AI to craft the audiences that truly resonate with your brand, like we've been talking about a lot on this episode, and just to ensure your marketing hits the mark every time. So if you scan that QR code, or if you're on podcast, you can go to bdex.com and click on Talk to an Expert, and you'll get Adam and his team who will be on the other side to answer some of your questions. But Adam, I'm always giving this spiel. Anything you would say to folks who might be looking at going to bdex.com and talking to you on Talk to an Expert?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it, Jesse. I mean, we help kind of at all different layers. We can help with the identity resolution side of things. We can help with the identity enrichment. And we work with great partners like the folks at TransUnion with the TruAudience platform to help activate those. And so we would be happy to have conversations with anybody as well.
Awesome. It's great having you here, Adam, to fill in some of that space. So thank you. You did a great job. But yes, definitely visit us at bdex.com and click on Talk to an Expert. And for those of you who are curious about the Deconstructing Data podcast, we are filling up. We're going to open up Tuesdays for paid opportunities. So if you are interested in getting in on the show this year, email us at info@bdex.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can make this show better for you. And with that, that's the end of the show. Matt, thank you again so much for coming on.
Happy to do it, Jesse, Adam. It's been fun, and we'll talk to you soon.
And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.